my decision is to stop. I don't know when I'm gonna be able to come back.
There's a reason the legendary tennis player Rafael Nadal is considered the king of clay. He is arguably one of the greatest tennis players to have ever graced tennis courts. Not only is he the proud recipient of 22 Grand Slam singles titles in the men's department, with 14 of them won at the French Open, he has won 92 ATP singles titles and 63 of them were won on clay courts. His prowess at Roland Garros was so overwhelming that a statue of him was erected on the tournament grounds as a symbol of his tennis greatness. The second of two men to have completed a career Golden Slam in singles, Rafael's relentless energy on the court and his ability to bounce back each time he is dealt a blow make him a very interesting player to watch. Knowing this with his recent plans to retire from professional sports in 2024, you must be wondering what really happened to Rafael Nadal. Well, let's take a walk back in time.
I was not doing that well, and then yeah.
It was 1986 in Manacor, a town in the islands of Mallorca, Spain, and Sebastián Nadal and Ana María Pereira had just welcomed the birth of their son, Rafael Nadal. He grew to develop a keen interest in sports, with a natural talent for football and tennis. Recognizing his potential, his uncle, Toni Nadal, who was also a tennis coach, decided to start training him and introduced him to the game of tennis. By the time he turned 8, Rafael won a regional tennis championship for ages 12 and under, and his uncle soon began to foresee him playing on a larger scale in the near future. Toni then encouraged him to switch to a one-handed forehand, favoring his left hand, as opposed to a two-handed forehand. 4 years down the line, with his growing success in tennis, Rafael made a choice to stop playing football and focus solely on the tennis. A year after he turned professional, Rafael played and won his first ATP match, becoming the 9th player to do so in the Open era at that age. This marked the beginning of many firsts for the talented Spaniard. Ever heard of the Big Three? The three champions, Rafael Nadal, Roger Federer, and Novak Djokovic, make up this squad and have been considered some of the toughest opponents to be faced on the tennis courts. In 2008, Rafael took Wimbledon by storm, upsetting the defending champion Roger Federer in the 5th set of what was the longest final in the history of Wimbledon, right up to that point. It was the 3rd time he was facing Federer on Wimbledon grounds, having lost to him the first 2 times. Their match ended in a 9-7 set, with many deeming it the greatest match in history to have ever been played. But their rivalry didn't just begin at Wimbledon. In fact, 4 years back, Rafael had played his first match against the Swiss athlete in the 3rd round of the Miami Open and had won in straight sets. Although he lost in the 4th round of the tournament, many predicted that he would carry the stint of victory into the clay court season. It was, however, not to be the case, as Rafael happened to have a soft spot. Because of the vulnerability of his left foot to injuries, it is said that his physical therapist Rafael Memo, or Titin as Rafael fondly calls him, gives special attention to his foot before each match in order to wake up the muscles around his feet and reduce the possibility of injuries. However, the foot seemed to be Rafael's Achilles heel for most of his career. An injury to his foot at the Madrid Masters in 2005 prevented him from competing in the year-end Masters Cup in Shanghai and the following year's Australian Open. By 2007, he sustained an injury to his knee at the final of Wimbledon, with rumours that the injury he had in 2005 predicated the damage to his knee. Although the stories were countered by a statement from Rafael and his spokesman, it had become more obvious that his foot was going to be the cause of many more problems. The following year, and once again, Rafael had to miss out on the Masters Cup in Shanghai for a 2nd time due to tendinitis in his knee. 2009 started out pretty well for Rafael. He won his first 5 matches at the Australian Open men's singles without dropping a single set, defeated Roger Federer in a 5-set final in their first meeting on hard courts, and became the first Spaniard to win the Australian Open. The year was surely looking good for Rafael. That is, until the infamous knee injury reared its ugly head once again, causing him to drop out of the Dubai Championships. He, however, returned to Spain, defeating Janko Tipsarevic in straight sets, giving Spain a lead at the Davis Cup. He then went on to win his 13th Masters title before losing to Roger Federer at the Madrid Open, the first time since 2007. As if the surprising loss wasn't enough, his knee injury resurfaced and caused him to drop out of the Aegon Championships and the Wimbledon Championships too. His withdrawal from these two tournaments made him fall from his position as world number 1 on the ATP Tour. But hey, 2009 could be considered a good year all round for Rafael Nadal, or don't you think so? If 2009 was good for Rafael, 2010 was even better. Arguably his best, in fact. It was the year he became the first tennis player in the history of the sport to play on all 3 different surfaces at Grand Slam events and win on each of those surfaces. A career Grand Slam in summary. He won the French Open without dropping a set, won at Wimbledon, and finally as well at the US Open. Quite a great feat, you see, as each of these surfaces require varying levels of skills, playing speed, and calculative moves. The weather in the countries where these tournaments are played also contributes to the performance of the participating players. For example, the French Open is played at Roland Garros on clay courts, the only Grand Slam tournament to do so. Clay courts are known to slow down the ball, producing a higher bounce when compared to its grass or hard court counterparts. This makes it harder for players who rely on their serves to win a match. Players have to be more innovative and calculate their moves properly in order to be at an advantage. Now that we have established how hard it is for players to play on clay courts, let's talk about how this legendary athlete managed the feat of being named the tennis king of clay courts. As I've mentioned earlier, Rafael is a left-handed player. This was a tactical choice suggested by his uncle to give him an edge in his playing abilities. Of course, being a lefty doesn't automatically confer greatness upon you, but it can be an added advantage to an already great player, and here is why. Number 1, the forehand side spin of a lefty is more penetrative than that of a right-hander. Number 2, left-handers can serve wide to a righty's backhand in the add service box on the points that count. Rafael Nadal is a perfect example, as he has a high bouncing serve that has proved quite challenging for most of his right-handed rivals, notably Roger Federer. Not to mention he is a broader and much stronger player physically. He uses his strength to chase down almost every ball across the court with relentless energy, not willing to let any shot drop. Although Rafael has argued that while the forehand of a lefty is against the backhand of a right, the righties also have their forehand against the former's backhand. It should be even, right? We can agree on this though, that playing a lefty seems uncomfortable for most right-handed players because it requires more thinking. Perhaps it's because there are more right-handed players in tennis, and most players feel the need to adjust their playing style when facing a lefty after weeks of playing right-handers. The professional life cycle of a sportsman is short-lived. It can be even shorter in the world of tennis. For athletes like Rafael Nadal, whose prime advantage is their speed, agility, and strength, there is an increased chance of wear and tear on the muscles of the knees, wrists, shoulders, and feet. This is because these players are more active on the court. They're chasing the ball at almost every point round the court, no matter how high or low the serve might be. Most physicians and physical therapists recommend a prehab, which is a way of exercising and strengthening the muscles around the joints before they're exposed to tear. For tennis players, Rafael clearly doesn't joke with this part of his routine, and more often than not he engages in pre-match drills in the locker rooms aside his regular training right before the match. Locker room Rafael showers, gets his ankles and knees taped, plugs in his headphones, and begins to jog and pace around the room and in place. In addition to his intensive warm-up sessions, he does 1-minute extended wall sits and some band work with some funky dance moves sprinkled in between. All of this is just to get his knees, wrists, and muscles in general ready for the game. But despite all these methods in place, the body has a funny way of telling you when it has had enough. This was exactly the case for Rafael earlier this year. At the 2023 Australian Open, Rafael sustained a serious injury to his abdominal hip muscle, the psoas muscle. And despite all rehabilitative measures put in place, he has since been unable to return to the courts, missing out on even his favourite tournament, the French Open. Unable to figure out a way to heal properly and make a comeback if only to defend his title at Roland Garros, he announced his withdrawal from every other tournament for the rest of the year. He explained that he needed more time to heal and make a great comeback in 2024, which might sadly be his last as a professional tennis player. Painful but solid decision if you ask me.